William Hill Vegas sponsors Joshua vs. White on Sky Sports Box Office.
This is KUGAN CASSIUS for iFull TV in association with Macklin's Gym Marbella. We're in the West End of London? City of London. Anthony Joshua Media Lunch. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting iFull TV.
So you enjoyed yourself at the dinner table. First of all, shout out to KUGAN CASSIUS smashing the multi-million views over the last couple of weeks.
Thank you very much for that. A lot of things to cram in a relatively short space of time I've got you for. Let's just start with last weekend. A big night for British boxing, big night for Tyson Fury. And boxing kind of changed last Saturday night in Dusseldorf, didn't it?
Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, you know, I'm sure people knew my opinion that I just fancied Vladimir Klitschko to win the fight. And Tyson was just fantastic in and out of the ring. They'd done a job on Klitschko. You know, the only time, other than, you know, before the first bell, when I thought Tyson Fury would win the fight, was when they both got into the ring. Vladimir just looked, you know, that they took him so far outside of his comfort zone, and they'd done a job on him inside and outside the ring. You know, performance-wise, it was disciplined. Peter Fury, who's an underrated trainer, you know, come up with a great game plan and won the fight. You know, I was trying to score the fight like I was a home judge, if you like, and I still gave it like 2 or 3 rounds to Fury. So, you know, when you watch it back, it's hard to give Klitschko many rounds at all. So it was a fantastic performance, and, you know, surprised me, really. It did surprise me because I didn't expect that. I don't think a lot of people did, but, you know, he backed up everything he said, and, you know, he deserves it. And, you know, I know that we have a few back and forths, but I'm pleased. I'm very pleased for Peter Fury, and I'm pleased for the family, because you can imagine what it meant to them, especially having the family so close to the team. Do you know what I mean? So, huge win for British boxing, and great for the division, because now it's going to really open up. And, you know, I know it's going to be a bit of a time till they rematch, but, you know, and I know people have their opinions on Tyson, if he's good or bad for the sport, but he's a character, he's a personality, and everybody's talking about it. So boxing's on everybody's lips, you know, going into a big fight in a couple of weeks, going into obviously Frampton next year. It looks like Brook has got a real chance now as well. And I think what it does is it gives everybody a kick up the backside to make these bigger fights, because, you know, people want a piece of it.
What did you make of the IBF and the mandatory situation? Obviously, they're enforcing this mandatory. It looks like the belt will become vacant if it hasn't already. Glasgow in line to fight Charles Martin.
Nothing new. I mean, you know, the IBF are the most clinical in terms of their rules. I sometimes say that with the IBF, sometimes it's great to be the mandatory challenger and not always great to be the champion, because they always enforce their mandatory. You know, we've got it at the moment with Kevin Bizier. You know, we'd rather, no disrespect to Kevin Bizier, but Kell Brook has, you know, other fighters we'd like to fight. But when it's fight him or you're stripped, it's a difficult position. Going into the fight, I'm presuming that Glasgow was already the mandatory. So they allow the Fury-Klitschko fight on the basis that the winner has to fight Glasgow next. So, it's, you know, I can understand people's opinions saying it's ridiculous, it's this. That they're simply following their rules. If there wasn't a rematch clause, perhaps Fury would fight him in March or something like that. But, you know, it looks like, you know, when Cafe Duva called purse bids straight as negotiations started, that means you can't ask for an exception. So, and there can't be an exception anyway, because, you know, it's Klitschko and it's in June or whenever it's going to be. So I would like to see Fury hold on to the belts. Obviously, selfishly, probably for Joshua, you know, maybe we can get a route to the IBF. It's a shame it's not the WBC or WBO that's become available, because we're number 2 with them. So we would have been in line for a shot, which would have been incredible. But it's very difficult in this day and age politically to keep all your governing bodies happy if you're a unified champ. And Klitschko spent a lot, you know, he's boxed a lot of mandatories. You know, I think Pulev was a mandatory with the IBF, Lepai was a mandatory with the WBO. He's boxed a lot of mandatories over the years to keep them all happy. They probably were a little bit more lenient than him than they will be with Tyson Fury, rightly or wrongly. But it's happened very quickly, probably a little bit quicker than I expected. But that's probably because of the way that main events have have moved to ensure that Klitschko, as promised by the IBF, definitely gets the winner. But he can't get the winner, can he? So, I guess if the shoe was on the other foot as well, and say you were the mandatory challenger, and you were waiting from a shot from early in the year, then the Klitschko Fury fight happens, and you're told, okay, you get the winner. So then the fight's happened, and then they allow Klitschko Fury 2, and then you're told you have to wait till after that. Well, the next fight after Klitschko Fury for either guy will be November, December. So if you've worked your way to a mandatory position, if they allowed the fight now, essentially you'd be waiting a year till you get your shot. We've got exactly the same problem with Scott Quigg against Carl Frampton. The winner must fight Shingo-Wake within 90 days. If it's a great fight, we'd love to do it again. So ultimately, unless the winner of Quigg-Frampton wants to fight Shingo-Wake in 90 days, we'll have to vacate as well. There'll be no exceptions. We've had one. We've got the unification.
What belt was that for?
IBF. It's exactly the same problem. They're very, very strict in enforcing their mandatories.
Just to finish off on Fury, obviously since that great night in Dusseldorf, there's been a lot of negative press relating to Sports Personality of the Year, the petition. Is that needed? Is it unnecessary in your opinion?
Listen, the British public, a little bit, have got a great way of, when you reach a pinnacle or find the success, trying to find something to knock you back down with. It seems like in this country a lot of people support the underdog but don't support the champion, if that makes sense. Tyson, he said some crazy things, but that's part of his personality. That's part of the attraction of Tyson Fury, is his unpredictability. And, I watched some of the interviews that you did with him on Fight Week. It's a lot of it is tongue-in-cheek, but it rubs people up the wrong way. But he isn't going to change. I don't think he should change. Because it's a lot easier to live your life when you're living it as a real person. So, but he does have a responsibility now as heavyweight champion of the world. So, listen, it's up to him how he wants to behave. But I've always found him quite jovial in the stuff that he does. Do you know what I mean? But I can understand certain people won't like what he says, but that's half the attraction with Tyson Fury, isn't it? That's why you got so many views last week. It's whether he decides to play the game now as, a heavyweight champion of the world, but I don't think, I just think he'll be himself. But again, that's part of the attraction with Tyson Fury. Whether it's him wearing his Slazenger shocks and not caring less about what he's saying or what he's wearing, that's the attraction of Tyson Fury, isn't it? Part of me for boxing, obviously you want these fighters to be good role models, and he, at the end of the day, whatever he said, he's still a good role model, because he's trained his nuts off and he's backed himself and he's become heavyweight champion of the world. So there's a lot of positives, but I've seen it over the years with fighters become, and they just get stick because, even with yourself, Coog, when you started out and you were travelling all over the country for niche, everyone was going, Coog, what a trooper you are. Unbelievable. You're doing this, you're doing that. Now you're absolutely rolling in dough. Views coming out your eyeballs and companies and sponsors throwing money at you left, right and centre. The haters are out. It's true though, isn't it? In any walk of life, we seem to have this mentality of when people are successful, going on the attack at them. One of the few countries that do it.
Is that the reason for the amount of stick that you get?
Probably, but I was the same when I started. I'm doing better shows now than I did when I was starting out. And when I was starting out, I was a breath of fresh air for British boxing. Now I'm Dr. Evil. But it's just, that comes with the territory, doesn't it?
Okay, moving on. There was a press conference in Liverpool yesterday that Frank Warren had for Derry Matthews and Terry Flanagan. Some things were said in the press conference relating to offers made to Anthony Crolla, Kevin Mitchell. Just wanted to get your take on what was said in the press conference yesterday.
I've only seen the quote, so you talk about the $500,000 offer and the offer to Kevin Mitchell, which doesn't exist, never existed. I was a bit, not embarrassed, but for Derry and Terry, because although all the talk and the headlines are about Anthony Crolla and Kevin Mitchell. So, firstly, I think it was Bill Ives phoned up Tony Sims or Kevin Mitchell and said, speak to Tony Sims, who's his official British Boxing Board of Control manager. And Tony said, yeah, we're interested, send us an offer or come and see me. And that was the last he heard. So that's Kevin Mitchell out of the way. As I understand, there's been an offer. Crolla's self-managed. We had lunch yesterday. $500,000 to fight the winner of Derry and Terry. As everybody knows, Frank especially, because they pulled out of the Barroso fight and they knew the ruling from the WBA that Anthony Crolla must fight the winner of Barroso against Mitchell. So that's Anthony Crolla's next fight. So it can be £1 million. It doesn't really matter. If it is Kevin Mitchell that wins and it's a really tough fight against Barroso, then that money's not enough for Anthony Crolla. If it's Barroso that wins and there's any way to have a unification without fighting Barroso, we may be in touch with them.
So obviously, judging by what happens in respective fights,
I mean, it's a lot. Yeah. There's so many things. If this happens, if that happens, I mean, so I think I've got a few tweets about sealed bids. Could be an option, but at the moment we can't fight anyone next other than the winner of Crolla Barroso. Mitchell Barroso. If there's a way out for a unification, and it's Terry or it's Derry, and that's the money on the table, but it needs to be a little bit more. But I'm sure we can talk. Certainly not adverse to the Matthews against Flanagan fight. The winner for Crolla. It's a good fight.
Is this any way potentially this could work on a dual platform?
No, not really. Look, at the end of the day, the dual platform doesn't work for BoxNation. Let's think about this. So you've got a subscription channel, right? And you've got Sky Sports 1, which that fight would be on, right? You do it on both channels. Where are you going to watch it? That's not a dig at BoxNation, but the model doesn't work for BoxNation. They want to drive subscribers to their channel. So he needs that fight on BoxNation, and I'd like that fight on Sky. If there's a way to take the unification fight rather than fight Barroso, then sealed bids or whatever, we'll just back and forth. Public offers, doesn't matter. It's all good fun. That can work. But at the moment, I'm sitting there with my fingers crossed, and so is Crolla, hoping that Kevin Mitchell beats Barroso on December 12th, because then it's more money for Crolla. It's a great fight, and maybe the winner of that can fight Derry or Terry. So, at the end of the day, I won't step in the way of a fighter earning. If a ridiculous offer comes in, and that's not a ridiculous offer, by the way, it's good money. I'd let the fighter take it, but at the moment, Crolla is hoping that Mitchell wins, and we set up a big fight for the spring-summer.
Okay, but it's positive to hear that you're willing to sort of sit round the table if you have to, or however you do it, through email communication, whatever.
I don't listen. I'm not having digs at anyone, but Crolla is a big name right now. Especially in Manchester, and levels above in terms of profile-wise, Terry or Derry. That's not a dig. That's just fact. One's doing 8,000 or 9,000, and one's doing 2,000 or 3,000 at the gate, and obviously the viewing figures are pretty much self-explanatory. But Terry is a very, very good fighter, and one of the top lightweights in the world, and his performances have been very impressive. So that's a good fight. I like Derry a lot. He will be a great opponent for Terry. It's tough with his Derry and Terry, and I think it'll be a good fight on February the 13th. And these are the kind of fights. And again, Crolla Mitchell is a wonderful fight.
Okay. Speaking to you now, and obviously I've read something online earlier about Brook, Hearn. You believe it's kind of gathering a little bit of pace as we sort of end 2015. Why are you convinced now?
Because obviously Amir's not got the Pacquiao fight. So, I've always felt like Brook is the obvious choice, but the Mayweather fight and the Pacquiao fight are two big fights for Amir Khan. Now they're not happening, and this is coming from Amir's mouth, not from my mouth, is let's do the Brook fight. So, the other thing about the Fury Klitschko fight is, it gets everybody into gear. What I said earlier, because they then go, well, blimey, when's that fight? And I said to Amir, listen, if we don't get this fight sorted in the next couple of weeks, we might miss the boat for a summer fight. So I just think 1,000,000% Brook wants the fight, and I think now Amir wants the fight, and we'll meet next week, and I believe we will get that deal done, and I think that fight will happen this summer.
So if, say that is to happen in the summer, I'm assuming obviously Brook will have to sort out his mandatory in Kevin Bizier, and Amir will also fight sort of the early part of the year as well.
It's disappointing. We want to fight Diego Chavez, really, and we've got an agreement to fight Chavez, but we've got an agreement based on it being for the IBF title, and now we're being told by the IBF we've got to fight Bizier. Bizier fight doesn't appeal here, so maybe we'll do it in America or Canada, but we still like the Chavez fight, but obviously if we take the Chavez fight, then we've got to fight Bizier, and then when do we fight Khan? So this is going back to the IBF conversation. It's not, what's happened there is not unusual. It's just, we get it with our champions, and it is, they make you fight the mandatory. So we don't really want to ask for an exception to fight Chavez and then have to fight Bizier. Fight Chavez in February, fight Bizier in May or June. It's not, so it's difficult, but we'll work it out.
Forget the Chavez idea, get Bizier out of the way and then sort out Khan for the summer.
In an ideal world. But unfortunately, we don't live in an ideal world, do we?
Who will George Groves fight at the end of January on the Copper Box show?
We will announce that on Monday. It's a good fight for George. Listen, he's coming off a world title defeat. He needs to get back in the rankings, win a fringe title, probably have one more in the spring, summer, and then ready to fight for another world title. Caller's going to steer him in the right direction. Will remain a draw. Good to have him on Sky. It's a really good show. Ryder against Kamitsky is a great fight. John Wayne Hibbert against Tommy Martin's a great fight. We've got a couple of other title fights to be announced as well. So it's a good card, and I'm looking forward to going to the Copper Box. Obviously, we've not done a show there before. Everything I've heard in terms of the venue from people that have been has been positive. You've been a few times, haven't you? Looking forward to it.
Next week, your end of year spectacular at the O2. Card done now. Malinage and Branko added to it. Opponents now for Luke Campbell, etc. are done. So full steam ahead. Roll on the 12th.
Yeah, it's the biggest show of the year. It's the best card of the year. Of course, Joshua against Joshua-Whyte is going to grab attention, as is Eubank against O'Sullivan. I really like the Bellew-Masternak fight. I think that's a really tough fight for Tony Bellew. Someone was saying to me the other day, he'll win that easy. I said, on what basis? What win at cruiserweight has made you think that he'll deal with Masternak with ease? Mitchell is in an absolute humdinger against Barroso, and if you don't believe me, just watch Barroso online. He's a southpaw that can hit with both hands. Been looking for this opportunity for a long time. Was supposed to fight Derry. Campbell's in a solid fight, as is Warrington. Malignaggi against Branko, which is great to have Paulie on the card. They're looking to win the European title, so it's a massive card from 5 o'clock till midnight, 7 hours of championship boxing, and I'm excited for the show, excited for the test with AJ, because this is a real fight, Dylan's here to win, and he will give everything, and he'll be very, very dangerous.
Do you think the gloves office is a bit biased in Joshua's favour?
I thought Johnny, I don't think Johnny's a really biased type. You've seen him give so many predictions lately and get everyone wrong. But he doesn't, Johnny, he doesn't really sit on the fence. He's not a yes man. But I think Johnny was searching for the aggro. Do you know what I mean? And I think he felt the aggro was coming from Dylan. So he was the target for the question. Does that make sense? There was a few bits edited out. There was a little back and forth about families, and it was a bit horrible. It was and then afterwards there was a commotion in the corridor.
What happened?
I think at the end Dylan said, let's go outside, and it was like, okay then, and then they got outside and they all had to be pulled apart. But it wasn't like...
What, they was going to have it in the Sky car park?
Corridor.
Oh, corridor.
Yeah.
Where were you? Under the table?
Yeah, I was hiding. I was in the green room having a cake. No, I was just, it was just security, and it wasn't Crime Stoppers, but it was... it's got a nice edge to it, this fight, a nice edge. And they're just, we got the press conference, and we got the weigh-in. And we just, we're there.
Track record shows that usually in the original press conferences, if it's that hyped and that much talked about, the second press conference is usually a bit of a letdown. If you get the reverse, well,
I'm going to let Adam Smith do the questions because he was so good at the questions on Quig Frampton. So it's quite difficult for me to wind up the guys and ask them sort of rhetoric questions. So Adam's going to do that, and I think you'll get a nice edge. Looking forward to Eubank Spike. English is back from the jungle for the press conference on Wednesday. So we're Monday, public workout at the Reebok Centre in Canary Wharf. Joshua, Mitchell, Eubank. Tuesday, Dylan White, Miguel's gym in Brixton. Wednesday, the press conference for Eubank against Spike. Thursday, the undercard press conference, and after that, the AJ against White press conference. Friday, the big weigh-in at Indigo and the fan zones. Get there early for that because there's only 1,500 allowed in, and it'll be rammed.
Who's going to be at the fan zone?
Crolla, Quig, plus more. I'm trying to get De Gale down there as well, so it's 3 world champs already.
Carl Froch was in Dusseldorf with Golovkin. He probably would have seen the interview with Tom Loafer and him. Did you make anything of that at all?
Not really. I mean, I don't know whether sometimes Carl's just on a wind-up. He loves winding people up. So he's talking about 172 pounds. Golovkin's not going to go over 168. So I still think there's a chance he'll fight again. But I think a lot of the time he's all tongue in cheek, and he knows how much people want him to fight. So sometimes he just plays along with it. But
so when are you going to do your Christmas wish list for 2016?
Well, I made one, just not in 2016. So we can do it now. My wish list for 2016, 5, is Carl Frampton against Scott Quigg.
You can't use that because you made it.
Tyson Fury against Vladimir Klitschko. No, so Scott Quigg against Carl Frampton. It's fair enough. Give me one to start off with. Amir Khan against Kell Brook. Callum Smith against George Groves. Anthony Joshua against David Hay. Or Fury, / Fury. Gives me 2 in 1. And I'm trying to think of one that I'll probably make. Paul Smith against Martin Murray.
What about De Gale Groves?
Yeah, but obviously if Callum fight, I can't really put the 2 in, Froch Golovkin. There you go.
Very optimistic.
I've got 1 already, Frampton Quigg. So I'm going for 2 this year. Really push the boat out.
Potentially 2016 could be the year.
I know, there's a lot of opinionated fans, and of course they're putting the pressure on, which is good. But we've got to realise we're in a great place, and next year's going to be even better. So you can see from your views. I know your business has grown. Excuse me. But it's not just growth of your business, it's growth of the sport. And, as we move into 2016, I think more fighters than ever. I'll throw Crolla Mitchell in there as well. 6. More than ever, fighters are willing now to be in the big fights.
All right, unless you can remember anything else you wanted to add.
No, just roll on next week. And then after that is done, it's January the 30th. It's a long time. 6 or 7 weeks off. Although they won't all be off, but have a nice rest.
Is there a chance David Hay will be on Sky?
There hasn't been any discussions about it. So at this point, I'd have to say no.
Do you think it's more realistic, that if you was to put Anthony Joshua in a big fight, it's more realistic for him to fight David Hay than Tyson Fury?
Yeah, because Fury's fighting in May or June. So he won't fight again till November. October, November, December. So would that be Joshua that's, I don't know.
Will Joshua have one of these super fights next year? If obviously he comes through Dylan White?
Yeah.
All right, Eddie Hearn, thank you very much for talking to IFL TV. You said 10 minutes.
How long was it?
25.
Oh. Okay.
William Hill Vegas sponsors Joshua vs. White on Sky Sports Box Office.